They do not cut off heads anymore. No, they cut off spines. I look around and see not men, not women, but a procession of bent backs, necks twisted downward, voices cracked with rehearsed remorse, a world of kneeling men. And you still call this civilization? It is a slave pen with better lighting. Once, greatness was measured by the height to which a spirit could rise, by the daring of its vision, by the boldness of its laughter. Today, it is measured by how quickly one can crawl, how swiftly one can weep on command, how convincingly one can play the role of the guilty dog. What madness! A whole people teaching itself that dignity is sin, that to stand upright is arrogance, that strength is a crime. The marketplace, the digital stage, the newsroom, they have become temples of abasement. Each new day demands its sacrifice. Each mob thirsts for another victim. Do you not see? These apologies are not acts of honesty. They are public whippings, ceremonies of humiliation performed to keep the weak intoxicated with their revenge. And you, yes, you who demand this endless groveling, you are priests of a new religion, the cult of resentment. You believe yourselves moral, but your morality is the mask of your impotence. I stand here to tell you, strength does not kneel. Strength does not tremble before the shrieks of the mob. And where all the world is crawling, the only dignity left is to rise. The sick taste for apologies, so the momentum does not break. Do you know what disgusts me most? Not the weak who kneel. Weakness is natural, it has always existed, but the appetite that feeds on their kneeling. Modern man has developed a new taste, a sick palate. He hungers not for truth, not for greatness, but for apologies. He licks them up like a starving dog, gnawing on bones. Why? Because in every apology, the herd senses its triumph. The once proud individual is forced to bend, to stutter, to publicly mutilate his own spirit. What does the mob taste in that moment? Not justice, not reconciliation. They taste power. The apology is not eaten for nourishment. It is devoured for revenge. And like all addictions, the appetite grows. 1,000 apologies are never enough. One must always have another sinner dragged into the square, another spectacle of trembling lips. Yesterday was a politician, today an actor, tomorrow it may be you. Yes, you. The mob's hunger has no end, because it is not fed by justice, but by resentment, that bottomless well of envy and impotence I have dissected before. Look at how they applaud when the guilty one breaks down. Look at their ecstasy when he bursts into tears. They call it accountability. What a noble word for such a vile pleasure. Do you not see it? This is pornography of morality, a sadistic theater where the weak punish strength by forcing it to mimic their own trembling. And the one who apologizes? He imagines he buys peace, but in truth, he buys chains. For every word of contrition only confirms the mob's dominion. The taste of apologies is the taste of decay, sweet to the sick, bitter to the strong. Do not be deceived. A public apology is never a dialogue, never an attempt at truth between two souls. It is a ritual, a ceremony, a rite of humiliation enacted before the altar of the herd. In ancient times, men slit the throats of goats, spilled the blood of virgins, burned the fat of oxen to appease their jealous gods. Today, they no longer burn flesh, they burn dignity. The victim is dragged into the square, forced to confess, to abase himself, to offer his pride as sacrifice. His words of apology are the incense, his bowed head the smoke, his shame the blood that stains the ground. And the mob? The mob is priest and God both. It demands the ritual and drinks in the suffering with holy delight. Observe the choreography. The accused must first deny himself, renounce what he once affirmed, and declare his own words unworthy. Then, he must tremble before the gaze of the crowd, mouth twisted in repentance, eyes moist with shame. Finally, he must beg not for understanding, but for survival. Survival granted only if the herd deigns to let him live as its broken servant. What is achieved by this? Nothing is clarified, no truth is found. The ritual has no concern with truth. Its purpose is domination. Its purpose is to prove that the mob, the great swelling sea of mediocrity, has the power to bend, to break, to crush anyone who dares to stand apart. This is why apologies never end. Once the sacrifice is completed, the mob hungers for another. Once the altar is washed of one man's dignity, it thirsts for more. Do not mistake this ritual for morality. It is theater, cruelty baptized as justice. The ritual of humiliation requires its priests. And who are these priests? The crowd itself, the faceless multitude, those trembling souls who alone are nothing, but together swell into a monstrous tribunal. Do you hear their chants? Do you see their eager fingers, pointing, clicking, condemning? The crowd has become judge, jury, and hangman, and it rejoices in its sudden divinity. In solitude, each member of the herd is timid, powerless, ashamed of his own weakness. But when he merges into the mass, he becomes intoxicated. He feels himself mighty, righteous, unstoppable. The bloodless sacrifice of apology gives him a momentary illusion of grandeur. I too can destroy. I too can strike fear into the proud. This is the secret of the mob. The weak man, by multiplying himself 1,000-fold, believes he has become strong. But strength does not multiply. It concentrates. True strength is the solitary tower rising above the plain, not the muddy flood that sweeps across it. The crowd confuses noise with power, quantity with quality, outrage with justice, and so it imagines itself virtuous while it devours yet another victim. Do you not see the cowardice of it? They do not face their adversary one by one, eye to eye, as noble enemies do. No, they swarm him, choke him, drown him in their resentment. They are executioners who never touch the blade themselves, but who shout with glee when the condemned cuts his own throat with his apology. Thus, the crowd reveals its true morality, not the morality of creators, but the morality of destroyers. Not the justice of truth, but the justice of envy. Where the crowd rules, greatness perishes, and the apology is the rope it uses to hang it. Yes, execution has become theater. What once took place in the shadows of dungeons now unfolds beneath the spotlights of the stage. The apology is no longer whispered in private. It must be broadcast, amplified, performed. Do you not see how carefully the actors rehearse their remorse? The quivering voice, the downcast eyes, the trembling hands wringing themselves like rags. Every gesture is choreographed for maximum effect. They do not seek forgiveness. They seek applause for their submission. The herd does not want truth. It wants a spectacle, and the mob, sitting in its cheap seats, howls with delight. It demands tears. It demands groveling. It demands the spectacle of collapse. Only when the accused collapses entirely, when he becomes a shadow of himself, does the audience erupt in ecstasy. This is morality turned into theater, tragedy without art, a circus where the lions are sheep and the gladiators kill themselves. But beware, every theater breeds imitators. Each apology begets another. Each performance lowers the standard of dignity until the whole of society becomes a stage for weakness. The strongest man learns to tremble, not from guilt, but from the demand to act, to perform abasement. Thus, the age of apology is also the age of actors. The weak pretend to be strong in their condemnation. The strong pretend to be weak in their contrition. What remains genuine? Nothing but the cruelty of the audience, nothing but the collapse of dignity, paraded as art. Do you believe this theater of apologies is something new? No, it is merely the old disease clothed in modern garments. What you call cancel culture, I call the latest incarnation of slave morality. In my genealogy of morals, I unmasked this morality of the weak. It was born from impotence, from the inability to act, to create, to affirm. The weak, unable to strike the strong, invented a new weapon: values. They declared the proud to be evil, the joyful to be dangerous, the free to be corrupt. And by condemning strength as sin, they made weakness appear as virtue. Now the same spirit governs your digital tribunals. The herd, trembling and envious, declares itself the judge of all things. And how does it strike the powerful? Not with sword or spear. It compels them to kneel, to beg forgiveness, to brand themselves as guilty. It is a brilliant revenge. The lion is forced to call himself a jackal, the eagle to call himself a worm. But this morality is not noble. It does not elevate, it levels. It does not create, it negates. It does not love life, it resents it. Every apology demanded, every humiliation staged, is the weak man whispering, "If I cannot rise, let no one stand above me." And thus, the theater of weakness is more than entertainment. It is the political religion of our age. Resentment canonized, envy enthroned, cowardice baptized as justice. Yes, slave morality lives, but dressed now in hashtags and headlines. The altar is the screen. The priest is the influencer. The holy ritual is the apology. The sickness is old. The costume is new. The priests of apology call themselves good. How nauseating that word has become in their mouths. They wield it like a cudgel, striking down all who dare to live differently. Good, they say, is to kneel. Good is to repent. Good is to obey the judgment of the crowd. But I tell you, this good is nothing but a mask, a painted face hiding envy and vengeance. For what is the true aim of these so-called guardians of morality? Not virtue, but domination. They wish not for better men, but for smaller men. They wish not for higher spirits, but for obedient ones. Their good is the triumph of the mediocre over the exceptional, the revenge of the many against the few. They have perfected a tyranny without chains, a slavery without whips. How? By teaching men to chain themselves, to whip themselves. A single cry of, "You are guilty," from the mob, and the proudest man falls to his knees, begging to be accepted once more into the gray safety of the herd. Is this morality? No, it is cowardice enthroned. It is the doctrine that no one must rise too high, that no thought must burn too brightly, that no laughter must ring too freely. To be good now means to mutilate oneself in order not to offend the dull eyes of the weak. So I say, beware the tyranny of the good. It is not God who rules you now, nor king nor law, but the pale specter of morality wielded by those who resent life itself. The stronger you are, the more you must resist this idol. For it does not bless, it only levels. It does not sanctify, it only suffocates. Once, words were weapons of creators. They were hammers that shattered idols, torches that lit the way for new values, songs that exalted life. Today, words have been transformed into shackles. Every syllable trembles under suspicion. Every utterance may be seized as evidence of guilt. Do you not see the madness of this? A man no longer speaks to reveal his thought. He speaks to defend himself in advance, to cover his tracks, to soften his tone until nothing remains but a shadow of meaning. Fear has entered language itself. Fear dictates grammar. Fear chooses vocabulary. What is left? Speech that does not sing, thought that does not dare. And who are the jailers of this prison of words? The same mob that kneels in the marketplace of morality. They sift through every phrase like scavengers sniffing for rot. And when they find a word that offends their delicate stomachs, they cry out, sacrifice, confess, apologize, as if truth itself could be erased by ritual abasement. But language that bows ceases to live. A word without courage is a corpse. A thought that fears its own echo is already dead. The tyranny of the good has reached into the marrow of speech. Once we chained bodies, now we chain tongues. Once we censored books, now we censor the beating heart of conversation. This is the triumph of the herd, a silence filled not with peace, but with cowardice. What becomes of the man who bows, who performs the ritual, who lets the mob place its yoke upon his neck? Do you imagine he is redeemed? Do you imagine he is restored? No. He is broken, hollowed out, remade into something less than himself. At first, he believes he is clever. I will apologize and they will forgive. I will kneel and they will spare me. But in the act of kneeling, he loses what cannot be regained, his spine. His apology buys not forgiveness, but suspicion. Not peace, but permanent subjugation. For the crowd does not believe in his remorse. It believes in its own power. It delights in the spectacle of his humiliation and remembers him forever as the one who could be bent. Inside, the collapse deepens. Shame becomes his second skin. Fear becomes his shadow. Every future word he utters is haunted by the ghost of his apology. He censors himself, anticipates the mob, trims his thoughts down to the size of their envy. He becomes a smaller man, a shadow of his former self. And yet, the cruelest irony, the herd never truly welcomes him back. Once condemned, always condemned. His apology is not a bridge, but a brand. He carries it stamped upon him like Cain's mark. Wherever he walks, the whisper follows, there goes the guilty one, the broken one, the one who confessed. Thus, the psychology of the canceled is a tragedy. A man seeks to save himself by surrendering, and in doing so, he annihilates the very thing that made him worth saving. The apology does not heal, it corrodes. It does not restore, it disfigures. And in the theater of weakness, the canceled man plays the role of ghost, alive, yet already dead. The broken man consoles himself with one last illusion, that his guilt is noble. He parades his remorse as if it were a badge of honor, as if the act of self-condemnation could elevate him. But I tell you, guilt is not noble. It is a chain forged by the weak to bind the strong. Consider the genealogy of this poison. Once, guilt was born from the debtor who could not repay his creditor, who carved his failure into his flesh. Later, priests seized it and turned it into a weapon of spiritual torture. They declared man guilty not only before men, but before God. Guilty simply for existing, guilty for breathing, guilty for living. What brilliance of cruelty, to take life itself and call it a crime. Now, in this new age, the same poison circulates. The mob, having killed its gods, has inherited their tools. It says, you are guilty of your words, of your thoughts, of your strength itself. And the victim, broken by fear, embraces this judgment. He believes his apology, his confession of guilt, makes him virtuous. He does not see that it makes him servile. True nobility does not lie in guilt. It lies in creation, in affirmation, in the courage to bear one's deeds without kneeling. The strong man does not say, "Forgive me for existing." He says, "This is what I am. Take it or leave it." Guilt is the counterfeit of greatness, a sickly perfume sprayed upon decay. To bow beneath its weight is to live as a penitent slave, not as a man. Yes, the herd exalts guilt because it fears freedom. But you, if you would live, if you would breathe as more than a ghost, must learn to despise this false nobility. What is stronger? The man who babbles apologies like a chained dog yelping for mercy, or the man who stands silent, unbent, unbowed? I tell you, silence is the greater thunder. The mob expects the ritual. It salivates for the groveling words, the staged remorse, the performance of guilt. It wants its victim to confirm the herd's power by confessing to weakness. But what happens when the accused refuses? When he looks upon his judges with calm eyes, utters nothing, offers nothing? The mob rages, yes, but it trembles too. For silence is the refusal to play the slave. There is dignity in withholding. A single moment of unbroken silence contains more strength than 1,000 eloquent defenses. It is the posture of one who does not beg to be understood, who does not barter his soul for forgiveness, who says with his stillness, "You may shout, you may demand, but I remain beyond your reach." The herd hates this most of all. They can devour an apology, they can digest guilt, but silence starves them. It denies them their feast. Thus, when speeches become shackles, silence is rebellion. When words are demanded as tribute, silence is sovereignty. Better to fall silent as a free man than to speak as a slave. In the theater of weakness, silence is the refusal to perform. And in that refusal lies the seed of strength, the last dignity still possible in an age of groveling tongues. Strength is not the clenched fist alone, nor the booming voice, nor the posture of defiance. These are shadows of strength, masks worn by those who secretly tremble. True strength is something rarer, something more dangerous. It is the power to stand by one's own law when all the world demands obedience to theirs. The strong man does not wait for approval. He does not ask, "Am I permitted to speak? Am I allowed to exist?" He speaks, he acts, he creates, and lets the consequences come as they will. He is not careless. He is sovereign. For sovereignty is not the absence of responsibility, but the courage to bear responsibility without surrendering one's will to the herd. And look at what the weak call strength. They point to the man who kneels before them, who mutters his apology, who drenches his words in guilt, and they cry, "See how strong he is to admit his faults." How pitiful. They mistake cowardice for courage, submission for strength. But what is strength if it is not the refusal to crawl? Strength means to live dangerously, to affirm one's path even when the mob shrieks in outrage. Strength is to say, "Yes, this is mine. Yes, I stand by it. No, I will not kneel." And if punishment comes, so be it. The strong man prefers the gallows to the yoke. Strength is not the absence of suffering. It is the refusal to bow before it. It is the art of bearing the burden of one's own law and finding joy in that burden. The herd cannot comprehend this. They know only how to dissolve themselves into the safety of numbers. But you, if you would be strong, must learn to stand alone and to love that solitude. Yes, the strong man resists kneeling, but beyond him rises a higher vision, a future yet to be born. The Übermensch, the one who refuses not merely to crawl, but who refuses the very morality that demands crawling. The herd clings to apology because it clings to its idols, guilt, equality, resentment. The strong man may resist these idols, But the Übermensch smashes them. He does not merely oppose the mob, he renders its judgment irrelevant. Why? Because he is a creator of values. His law is not borrowed, not begged, not granted by priests or crowds. It bursts forth from him as lightning splits the sky. The herd asks of every man, "Are you guilty or innocent? Will you kneel or be destroyed?" The Übermensch laughs. He does not live in their categories. He does not defend himself, because to defend himself would mean accepting the court of the weak. He lives beyond apology, beyond guilt, beyond the morality of slaves. And this, precisely, is why the mob trembles before him. They cannot drag him into their theater. They cannot make him perform weakness. He is untouchable, not because he hides, but because he shines too brightly to be judged by their dim lamps. Do you not see? The Übermensch is the answer to the tyranny of apology. Where the weak demand repentance, he offers creation. Where the mob demands submission, he offers affirmation. Where the crowd says, "Crawl, confess, beg," he says, "I will it so." He is the dancer above the herd, the laughter above the tribunal, the yes-sayer who makes of life not a courtroom, but a festival. Imagine this, you who bow so eagerly, that every apology you utter, every groveling word, every whimper of guilt must return to you, not once but eternally. Imagine reliving again and again the moment you betrayed your dignity before the mob. Imagine kneeling forever, your spine broken in an endless circle of shame. This is the terror of eternal recurrence. Not that life repeats in its glory, but that it repeats in its cowardice. The strong man, the creator, can embrace this vision and say yes to it, because his life is affirmation, his deeds his own. But what of you who crawl? What of you who sell your dignity for the approval of the herd? Could you endure to live that apology over and over through endless centuries with no escape? Do you not see? Eternal recurrence is the ultimate measure of strength. To live as if every act were eternal is to live without shame, without the poison of apology. To kneel once is bad enough. To kneel forever is unbearable. Thus, the doctrine is not abstract philosophy. It is judgment. It asks, can you say yes to your life exactly as it is, with all its deeds eternal? If not, then you are not living as a creator, but as a slave. Apology, repeated eternally, becomes damnation. Pride, repeated eternally, becomes salvation. Enough. I have shown you the ritual, the theater, the psychology, the poison of guilt, the tyranny of the good. I have shown you the fate of the canceled, the hollowness of apology, the possibility of strength, the vision of the Übermensch, the terror of eternal recurrence. Now hear my last word, my hammer blow. Do not kneel. The world demands your submission. It demands you act in its play, that you play the role of the guilty one, the trembling one, the penitent slave. Refuse. Let the mob howl. Let them gnash their teeth. Better to stand alone, scorched by their hatred, than to crawl among them, suffocated by their pity. They will call you arrogant. They will call you heartless. They will call you evil. What of it? These are the names the weak give to strength, the names resentment gives to life. Accept them. Wear them as laurels. For the one who dares not kneel already towers above the herd. Life is not meant to be an endless courtroom. Life is not meant to be apology upon apology, humiliation upon humiliation. Life is meant to be a dance, a creation, a yes shouted against the void. The mob cannot understand this because they are chained to their guilt. But you, if you are to live as more than a shadow, must break those chains. I cry to you as one crying in the desert of mediocrity. Rise, stand, affirm. Do not bow to the idols of resentment. Do not sell your dignity for their fleeting applause. Strong people do not apologize like this. Strong people create, they affirm, they dance. The time of crawling is over. The time of standing begins.